Um, so, was able to fulfill his desire to have me leave his premises, his territory, where I'd shop frequently, and so had encroached upon his sense of territory, his place. It's not just where he works, it's where he lives. It's where his whole life is focused. It's where he is who he is. It's where he can be around young females and be looked up to by them, you know? Imagine a young, gorgeous 23-year-old woman busying herself going, oh yeah, I gotta talk to my manager first. My manager, he's my manager. It's like, and you have this for the first time in your life, you have an important relationship with a young, attractive female. And you're a man who's probably never really developed properly. Oh, Tucker. Hey. Hey, Tucker. Hey, Tucker. Hi. 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 Come on. Hi. Hi. Come on. Yeah. I won't touch him. He seems like a good guy. He's a good guy. Yeah.
When he decides he's done, he just fucking bolts back to the car.
I've had dogs do that too. As soon as they're done, they're all about going back. Yeah.
Yeah, he just fucking.
Yeah. I know he's safe. I just thought he's a cute guy. I'll just sort of like flag him down. How you doing there?
He just wants to get to the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
He thinks if he gets back to the car now,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's all good. He gets fed. Everything's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm fucking up to the photography for him.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
I
Sorry.
appreciate
Yeah. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
it. Hey, hey.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, I didn't say you could. Hey.
I had a young Shih Tzu just like that.
He's an old man. He's like 14 and a half.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So now he's his own man now.
Yeah. Yeah. He's. Oh man. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. It's a good day for photography. Okay. He didn't ask me to catch his dog, so I didn't. I just sort of put on my arm so he could catch up to him. So, oh, he knows where he's going. I could have stopped his dog, but he didn't seem to want me to. And so, yeah, this manager. And then it was a series of bus drivers who had expressed, in different times, but also in about a 2-week period at the same bus stop under similar MO, an interest in communicating to me in no uncertain terms. I shouldn't consider myself safe standing and waiting for a bus without being, in some sense, deprived of the kind of dignity to which I'd become accustomed to enjoy, while with every deference for the position and authority of any respective bus driver over a course of my life. And it's only in this region that I've ever experienced that. And so I don't use them anymore. And I went to great lengths to express my shock and horror and disgust to various orders of this company for the last 2 years, especially since the way it was originally dealt with forced me to contend with a number of very aggressive and unsettling experiences, none of which involved anything close to an apology or even an acknowledgement that such and such a thing could even go wrong at all, or that it was something that one could be concerned about, not just for oneself but others. These were all things that were just dead stop for these people. And it's not something you'd ever see in any other bus system in the world. And combined with things I'd seen in terms of treatment of children and what I would call reinforcement and negative reinforcement of customers who are of a vulnerable or delicate nature in terms of race, age, and so forth, was simply not to be abided. And I just gave them shit for the last 2 years. Just pummeled them. I have no respect for you. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't know how you could ever abide your own children being treated this way. It's quite clear that the public trust is being exploited. by any number of your drivers, and it's only to be assumed that this behavior has not, as much as it has not been prohibited, has been tacitly condoned. Especially when it does happen, all you get is denial and aggression. These are bad signs from any group, let alone a company with 58 million passengers a year. It's a very, very bad thing. And to explain to them in terms of my knowledge and background, just what you can expect to be confounded by in terms of how unbelievable such behavior can be, and how you might actually be condoning it without knowing it. That people get duped by behavior. They don't realize what they're participating in because someone says to them, hey, someone in your group tried to rape me. That's unbelievable. You know, that's so indescribably unbelievable. I'd more believe that you tried to rape them. You know? And nobody ever figures it out. You know? In a crevice, this sort of demonic energy can find itself justifiably satisfied by its compulsions. It will. Who wants to be in an environment where there's a kind of evil satisfy itself any way it can? On top of which, even if that were the case, is that human beings retained enough sensibilities, despite their conditioning, culture, the unfortunate parameters attending your union acceptance through various social and financial relationships and so forth, that, you know, there's something to be dealt with here. You know, there's always a right person in a group, certainly not the victim, to go, hey, just don't do that. How you doing? Look, you got some concerns? Great. Just don't do that. Just don't do that. You're concerned about this person? Don't do that. You're concerned? Don't do that. They'd rather tell you how to behave, who've done absolutely nothing wrong, and move you around and placate you and fob you off. Don't do that. Should be something that's heard every day. Hey, don't do that. An alpha leader can look at someone and say, hey, don't do that. Don't. If you watch Goodfellas, there's a scene where Robert De Niro's character is talking to the guy who's like, and saying, hey, that's wrong. Hey, don't do that. Yeah. What about this? Hey. And he knows that the guy has an agenda. Right? That all of his reasons are not legitimate because there's another agenda. And he's like, that's why he's a leader. He's an alpha male. I don't recommend the movie. It's quite violent, but he's like, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. And he has the guy's respect. Otherwise, he'd probably kill most people. Right? Don't do that. So if you have someone, I've seen people in groups and cults where there's people who do awful shit and there's no one to say, don't do that. Right? Or even say, don't do that. They don't really take it far enough because they don't really acknowledge. When someone rapes someone, it's like, don't have sex with your students. You know, a 50-year-old professor sex with a 19-year-old girl, and someone says, oh, you know, you shouldn't have sex with your students. No, you shouldn't with your students. Depending on her level of emotional and psychological development, that might be no different raping a 14-year-old girl who wasn't really looking for sex in the first place, but just was a little in awe of you and released certain inhibitions that have never had the chance to kind of find a maturity that allows her to properly consent or not to your romantic ovations and so forth, right? You understand that as a feminist, right, as rape. So afterwards, he was like, oh, God, I feel disgusted. Meanwhile, he's telling his friends, hey, I banged her, you know? How often does that happen? So I hope that's useful. And if there's no, and then, you know, as much as feminism, how to say, like, look, we've got to hold a lot of people, we've got to hold all men responsible for rape, right? Let's start with that. Because every man who from a system that has taught them to do that, and that men have enjoyed a quote-unquote qualified advantage, and whenever they happen to be compelled to do so, taking use of that advantage to create disquiet, vaginal rips and tearing, and just utter agony in hundreds of thousands or millions of women or children or other men. We must find man himself dishonored in every sense, because the robe of man and any kind of deference that we had ever learned to give someone with a penis has been exploited in so much that we could give a fuck about your penis anymore and what rights you think it should be attributed with. So you can understand the anger, right? And then if someone says that, you know, feminists just hate men, which they often do, they have the prerogative to do that. Not everyone, but I mean, if you do, feminine will help you do that. And if you have other concerns, feminism might help you do that. I mean, people are allowed that, right? And they would say, look, feminism is the result of a lot of restraint on women to turn the hatred and perhaps reasonable cruelty they might want to mete out to any number of men and turn education and knowledge that has taken hundreds of thousands of female sweat hours in personal agony to their heart, their families, and their lives. Or even just to watch other women live in some kind of mute denial or misery because some fucking asshole needed to get boxed off for 5 minutes. So I think that's a pretty restrained group of people who have helped to establish a watershed in human ethics. The next step, of course, is getting us to live by it and finding out how to educate. Now, when people they hate feminism, including myself, they disagree with the means, the way that this is used. As any kind of undertaking like this is bound to have its successes because it's made of people who are angry and upset. And yes, sometimes just as criminals themselves. So I know what it's like to be angry at someone for a gender that's hurt you. And to say, I can just try to grow and educate myself and others. Think of ways that, I taught myself incorrectly in how to approach females and what to expect from certain types of female behavior. That's telegraphing something. Women in religions, women who talk about pain like it's something their god or guru has completely solved is not a good sign. Women who tell you that their father tried to choke their brother to death, not a good sign. Women who sexually assault you and then tell you they think that you've raped a number of young people that you know in the community, not a good sign. And they're surprised you don't want to be their boyfriend, not a good sign, right? So invite you to live in their home and then invite another strange female who you know to be a nymphomaniac who eventually marries a guy and kills him, not a good sign, right? So, and you would say, if you're a man who spends time around these females and you've come to dislike women, you've also made a number of bad choices. And that's something you would usually say about females, maybe, but I'd like to offer myself as an example of how that can be a useful consideration, as long as it's not forced on someone and commensurate with not listening to how they feel. And they might not like to hear that right now. If done in the right way at the wrong time, you might as well rape them again, right? Because it sounds like, we don't care about you. And these are the things like why you've got to listen to how people feel. And so we know, like, if you rape, you don't say, hey, you wore that dress, you went out with them, or you married him, or you did this, and you did that. It's like nothing the victim does makes someone deserve to be raped. But we acknowledge as feminists that we can't expect men to know how to be decent to a female because of the conditioning of men. And I would add the conditioning of females, and the conditioning of me, and the conditioning of you. And we all fight it, and we all get above it in many respects. But there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of pain, and we end up hurting each other. So moving along, I'm just walking through. I'm not sure if it's even quite noon yet, but I figure it's time to keep moving for a while since I think there's a bench down here I'll probably end up sitting on. And didn't fall off the 3 guys. So I wish anyone listening to this piece, I know what it's like to work hard every day for the peace that you can have. Oh, for a second I thought I lost my mirror. I'm like, oh, I gotta be more careful with that. And 14-year-old sort of Shih Tzus. tend to do well. I think if I got another dog, it would be a Shih Tzu or a Shih Tzu Bichon. I like that. It's a good combo. Bichon in general, I think combinations of breeds are better than full breeds in some cases. Buddy is a good example, and my mom takes great care of her. I'm around too, so my heart suffers its trembles. Tremble a little. Have my 2 queens to pay. We're getting home fairly early. I'm gonna check this my night. I'd be surprised if it's even noon yet. Maybe 11:30.